Welcome everybody to another episode of the Nerd Continuity, where we talk about design, development, and all the other crazy stuff that we find online. Today's episode, once again, we have the one and only Chris Perko. Hello,
Hello.
Chris.
Hi, this is my face.
Yes, it's your face. We are like, I don't know, probably you cannot see the layout, but we are like close to each other and like looks like we are in the same room. Not at
Yeah.
all. It's completely different. I have
No,
like,
thousands of miles away.
yeah, exactly. It's like your image is so bright and sunny and mine it's so
Yes.
dark and mellow. Like you
Yeah.
can definitely see the difference in weather and
Oh yeah.
happiness. Yeah.
Yeah, we've had a beautiful weekend here in Texas.
Nice. Good for you, man.
Yeah.
Here it's raining nonstop since November.
Oh.
I'm slightly depressed. I'm thinking to book a flight and to go to Hawaii like for a week because I need a little bit of sun. So
Oh yeah.
that's you gotta do what you gotta do to survive this winter. That's terrible. Do you have like rain at all? Like it does it rain at all in Texas or?
Yeah, so we don't get a lot of rain, but when we do,
Mhm.
it floods.
Oh, really?
Not long after I moved here, I actually lost my car in a flash flood. So
No way. Oh my
yeah,
God.
I had no idea what was happening, and next thing I know, my car was about to be swept off a bridge. So
Oh.
uh yeah, we don't get rain for forever, and then we get tons of it.
Okay, yeah. So you're
Yeah.
it's just yeah, plenty for one time, and that's it.
Yes.
Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
okay, so you're grateful that it doesn't rain that much. Okay, awesome.
Yes. Yeah.
So the main topic of this episode today is like a really broad topic, and probably we're gonna split it in a couple of episodes. Let's see how it goes. But it's like the probably the main question or like the question that everyone has is like how to become a web developer. And in this question, how to become a web developer, there are other 20,000 small questions for every single step of the process of actually becoming a web developer.
Mhm.
And we also asked on Twitter if they had questions specific to these topic, and we got a bunch of questions. So
Mhm.
before starting the episode, though, I actually want to use you
Okay.
to, it's like not in a sexual way, of course, but I want to use you to do a check in because I know this, and this is probably one of the first advice that I would give to a newly developer, a new developer.
Mhm.
Find someone to do weekly or monthly check ins
Mhm.
on personal projects or schedule because it's a really lonely life, the life of the web developer. You can spend like hours in coding and in your room, not talking to anyone, and
Mhm.
you don't have anyone to check on your work. Just also saying, yeah, I'm working on this or I'm not working on that. It's a good thing to share and it's a good thing to check on everyone's progress. So, what are you working on recently, Chris?
Yeah, I'm kind of in between like side projects. I built Kickoff WP. I finished that by the end of the year. That was kind of my goal was to get like a minimal viable product out there by the end of the year, which is just simply a like an interface you can use to build out the WordPress customizer. It just gives you all the code that you can just put in,
Mm-hmm.
register it with your functions, and it works. So I built that. I did a short little weekend project where I was just building a little Laravel app that pulled information from a local radio station and to just to see what kind of things they're playing, how often they're playing it, things like that. Um, yeah, right now I'm kind of in between projects. I'm
Mm-hmm.
not sure what my next project's going to be outside of work. We're in the middle of like a big move to
Yeah.
Atlanta soon, so I think maybe in March I'll probably start something new and figure out something exciting to work on.
Nice. Awesome. What about your experience with the customizer? Because I haven't had
Mhm.
time or I haven't had a chance to actually dive deep into the
Mhm.
customizer. What can you tell me about it?
I really like it. It's nice because there's you have your sidebar where you can set your settings and things, and then on the main panel you have your theme, which you're looking at, like maybe the front page or a certain page you're working on.
Mm-hmm.
And as you update fields in the customizer, depending on how you set it up, it'll either refresh the page periodically as you're making changes, or you can work some JavaScript in there where it'll actually live update onto the page. So it's a really cool way to allow the users to customize certain things.
Mm-hmm.
I'm working on a site for a guy that does real estate. He's a friend of mine, And it was really just a way for him to collect leads from Facebook ads.
Oh,
So it's basically just a landing page with some text, a big background image, and a few form fields.
mm-hmm.
But I wanted him to be able to change like the background image and some of the text on the page to see, oh, I run this ad for this week. Let me change the text, run the ad for another week, see how it affects the lead generation.
Nice.
So it's just a really easy way for users to be able to change quite a bit of aspects of their site.
Awesome. That's great. Yeah, I need to dive deep into that one. I actually it's my fault. Like I didn't spend too much time. Like a lot of users on my tutorial, they ask, can you do a tutorial about a customizer? I'm like, I don't have time for this. But yeah, I should definitely do that. Especially because I think like WordPress is gonna replace the settings API completely with the customizer API, because having like custom administration options available in the front end for you to edit and see the results in real time, it's way better than having the back end completely separated from the front end. So that's good. Awesome.
Yeah, if you look at just the basic settings of setting up some simple fields, it's not a lot of code that's required in the PHP side. If you want the real-time updates, it's a little bit more in the JavaScript, but it's really not difficult to do at all.
How's
it's pretty quick to pick
how's
up.
the JavaScript syntax in there?
It's been a little while since I've looked at it. It's I believe it was the last time I looked, it was based on jQuery. It's which you could easily do it in vanilla JS.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
It passes you some sort of object you use to tell it, like, I want this element with this ID or this class name to be updated when this certain field changes, and it just does the update for you.
Oh, nice. Does it reflect the kind of like the reactivity of Vue.js or React, or it's more like a really old school type, like check the DOM, and if the DOM updates, just injects the new text and stuff like that?
Right. Yeah, I haven't looked at what the code's doing behind the scenes, like the object that it gives you. But I imagine it's the old school way of just checking the DOM and updating the object.
Nice. That it's always solid, then it works anyway, so
Yes,
it's fine. It does the job. From my point of view, I'm working on 1,000 different things. It's insane. I need a break. But at work, we're going through a massive rework and refactor of our application, and we had to upgrade from Laravel 5.2 to 5.5. That is the new LTS. And we are using this chance to rebuild completely the front end in Vue.js instead of AngularJS. So that was like kind of outdated. And it's the first time that I'm building like pretty big single page application with many options, many features. And it's amazing, actually. I was afraid that I was going to have like so many problems and issues. Instead, Vue.js feels kind of natural, kind of easy to understand. I'm still not quite sure how the magic behind the map state and map action of Axios work. Like those are super weird, especially the syntax that if you want to call a function that you define inside your Axios store, or Vuex, actually, I should say Vuex, you call that function with ... map actions, and then you pass that function as a string inside the map actions object, which is a weird syntax that I've never seen before. So it's still
yeah, that's something that I'm definitely lacking on my ES6 or 7, whatever we're up to now. But the ... that spread operator, I always have to look it up. I'm like, it's too magical. I don't really understand what it's doing, and I'm like, oh, okay, it's just passing everything through in a certain way, and but yeah, it's it's a little confusing.
Yeah. Yeah, but it's interesting. And other than that, I'm reworking Sequeler, my application for Elementary OS. I'm refactoring completely with a better code because I built it when I didn't know anything about Vala, so it shows. It's like a really crappy application, hard to maintain. And then keep working on Akira that I have no idea when I'm gonna release, but it's gonna happen. I don't know. Probably later than sooner, but it's gonna happen.
Yeah, well, that'll be exciting to have some UX software for Linux finally.
Yeah, I really hope so. It's like literally is the only thing that keeps me on Mac OS, like a UX, a solid UX application for UX design. It's the things that current softwares, even like Krita, that is one of the best design application for Linux, is not good for UX. It's like perfect for digital painters and small design things, but mostly it's for digital painters. There's no like the vector part. It lacks of like basic features. Well, we'll see how it goes. But let's jump on this episode. So the topic again is how to become a web developer. We both have 10 plus years of experience, and we probably did a lot of mistakes.
Oh, yeah.
And we're going to try to talk through all the mistakes and all the steps that we did. But the first question of this massive, massive topic is, how do you decide your career in web development without getting super overwhelmed? Because web developer is like so broad. Like you could be a front end, a back end, even a DevOps. It's part of web development in some way. You could be UX developer or an interaction developer or stuff like that. There are so many different branches. So in your opinion, or like based on your experience, how do you decide your career when you just start, like when you have no background?
Yeah, that's a tough question. For me, coming out of college in the late 2000s, web was fairly new to like applications. Everybody was still building applications for the desktop and things, especially working with companies and working with internal systems. So as things started to switch, for me, it was just about what I enjoyed working with. I started playing around with a little bit of ASP.NET at the time. I really started liking particularly the front end of things. And for me, it was more of just having just immediate results. I can write some code, refresh the page, and I have immediate results as to what I've done. There's no compiling or anything like that. So I think the best thing is to just try out different technologies, look into different programming languages, different frameworks, just figuring out what you enjoy. Because if you enjoy something, you're going to learn it a lot better. You're going to want to spend more time learning it. It'll just come easier to you. So that's my advice, is just do what you enjoy, what you have fun doing.
Yeah, indeed. I completely agree with you. And it was kind of similar for me. It's weird now to give an advice to new developers, because now there's so many things. There are so many things that you can do. Before, like when we started, it was like HTML, CSS, and probably some JavaScript. But JavaScript wasn't even like the best thing ever to use, because it was really heavy, resource consuming, resource hogging. And like if you had a computer with 500 megabytes of RAM, you were a magician. You're like, your computer is so powerful. What you have to do with 500 megabytes of RAM? Oh, so many things.
Yeah.
So we're so old. But anyway, so at that time, like the choice was kind of like simple. Like I was doing design. Actually, I was studying to become an architect, and then I dropped out of university after 3 months because I realized that like I didn't have any interest at all in architecture. I was like, this is so boring. And instead of studying, I was spending pretty much every night in front of the computer, fascinated by these websites, by these different things that were coming up on the internet and how these things work. Like this is really, really engaging and really magical. So I started picking up PHP pretty much immediately, and it was really tough. It was really challenging, but yeah, it was kind of like super weird. But the thing is that at that time, the resources weren't like these spread and easily available like they are today. So
there was no AliCAD channel.
Yeah, that wasn't YouTube and my awesome tutorials. But yeah, so yeah, it was kind of tough. Like I had to study on a book, and a lot of times, like books, I don't know if you had the same experience. Books had like the code examples without even a CD or like a floppy disk to actually have the code. And sometimes the code examples written in the book were wrong. They had like typos or mistakes. So you were actually copy pasting the code, like rewriting perfectly, and it wasn't working because there was a mistake in the book. That was the worst. But yeah, so a developer today has the pros of having so many resources that you can literally like spend a month studying around, looking around, and then decide what you really like. But then you have the cons that you have so many information, so many different things that you can get overwhelmed. And one of the, and I'm gonna jump back, I'm gonna redirect this question to you. One of the main questions that I get in underneath my tutorials, my video, or via emails, like, what should I learn? Like, I want to be a web developer. Should I learn immediately React, or should I learn immediately Laravel? I don't know anything about PHP. It's okay if I study Laravel from the day one. I don't know anything about HTML. It's fine if I just do JavaScript frameworks. And yeah, like, how would you answer to these questions?
Yeah, I mean, I really think the best way to go about this is start with just HTML and just CSS. You can do so much with just those two. And then once you get to the point where you start saying like, okay, I know how to build websites now, because most websites don't even need JavaScript if they don't have any kind of contact form. If it's just like a business saying, oh, here's information about us, call us for a reservation or whatever. And it's not until you get to the point where you're like, okay, I want to start making a form, or something more interactive, that you can start messing with JavaScript. And I think JavaScript is one of these things where you really need to know the basics of JavaScript, the bare vanilla JavaScript, before you start working with frameworks, because until you realize how the frameworks are helping you and how they can really speed up things, you won't really understand why you're doing things a certain way in React or Vue or Angular.
Yeah, true. Indeed. Absolutely. Totally agree. Yeah, learn the basics. The basics
Yes.
are the thing. Even if, like, sometimes I get even silly questions that are not that silly if you think about it, but silly questions like, oh, it's like 2018. Should I actually learn HTML and CSS? I don't need those. I can just use post CSS directly, or start directly with Sass, and I don't need to care about regular CSS because the compiler does everything for me.
Right.
But it's still the thing, like, you should first learn the basics. Even if it's super boring, the basics will help you to realize what you like and what you don't. Because if you start directly with React, probably you're going to get super overwhelmed, of course, because a lot of concepts, you cannot grasp those concepts if you don't have a solid understanding of vanilla JavaScript. But even that, if you start directly with React and then after 3 months, you still don't understand React and say, okay, JavaScript is garbage, I don't want to do JavaScript, I'm going to go to PHP and I'm going to be like a backend developer, that's probably you're living a career that you could probably love, because you started on like with the wrong foot and you started directly with something super complicated instead of the basics. So yeah.
Another thing with learning just the basics of JavaScript or CSS, we don't know how long post CSS is going to be the hot topic, or
True.
React. So if you start learning React, and let's say 6 months from now, nobody's using React, they're using something new, then you're going to have to start all over and not really realize why React is not the best option nowadays. So really understanding the basics of JavaScript, and I say go through and try to build an app with just vanilla JavaScript, and see all the things that you have to do, and then you'll realize later, oh, like the reactivity of React or Vue is helping so much. I don't have to do all this, checking on the DOMs, objects and everything. So
yeah, definitely. So still in 2018, learn the basics. It's still the
definitely.
thing. If you're super confused, you don't know how to decide like which career should I get, like front end, back end, DevOps and stuff like that, start with the basics. The basics are easy to understand, and they will give you an overview of what you're gonna do for the next 10 years. And you're gonna know pretty much immediately if you're gonna hate it or you're gonna love it, because yeah, it's easy to grasp and you can have a nice overview. So probably I think we kind of answered the first part, how to decide your career without getting overwhelmed. Do you think we missed something, or do you want to add something?
Yeah, another thing is you don't have to learn the front end and the back end at the same time. There's a lot of free APIs out there.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're learning to build applications and you're really focusing on the front end, and you don't want to have to build a PHP or .NET or Node.js backend to handle requests, you can use things like GitHub. You can
Mm-hmm.
make an app to search repositories or search users, and just use those free APIs to learn just the front end and not have to really worry about what's happening in the back end, what's happening with authentication and everything.
Mm-hmm. That's a really great suggestion that ties pretty well with the next part, with the next question. That it's another really common question is like, where should I find my resources? Where and how should I properly learn things? Especially with this overwhelming amount of resources that we currently have. It's so easy for a new developer to start following like a tutorial or a class, or paying a lot of money online to follow a class. And then after 3 months realizing that's not actually what I need, or like this resource is outdated and I shouldn't have to listen to this and all this kind of stuff. So where would you recommend to look and to what to
Yeah,
do?
it's a good question because, like we were talking about earlier, things have changed so much.
Mm-hmm.
And when I was starting, when I first started getting into programming in high school, I was programming on a TI-83 plus calculator, and
Nice.
just just using BASIC, and it was completely procedural and
Yeah.
terrible. And um, and now there's so many just free resources on YouTube, free articles on blogs and things like that. So I think, before you start paying money for specific courses, it'd probably be best to go find those free resources on different topics of web development or just programming in general, and finding what you really like. Once you find what you like, and let's say you want to be a Laravel developer,
Yeah.
then make the next step and buy Laracast, or if there's a course in your area, maybe go check it out. But yeah, if you just start spending money on all these different courses, then you might just be spending money on stuff that you're not going to use or you're not going to like. You could spend money on a Node.js course and then realize, oh, okay, I don't really like Node.js, or there's no Node developer positions available in my area. So yeah, so definitely, look at, what you like first.
Yeah, indeed. It's yeah, it's kind of weird. Like I tried the other day to like put myself in the shoes of a new developers and then do a research on YouTube and say like, I don't know, WordPress from start, or like learn Laravel from scratch. And you get results on YouTube of like these, I don't know, 20,000 different results in hundreds of pages of playlists and videos about start I don't know, learn Laravel in 5 minutes, and like, I don't know, master Laravel in 2 weeks, and all this kind of stuff. And I can see the hard choice that you have, like, where should I start? Are these information actually valuable? And if I know we are in a day and age where everything is super fast, so also new developers, they want to learn everything like super quickly. They don't want to spend like 6 months in slowly learning and then trying to apply. They want to find a job immediately. So which resource is the best? From my point of view, the suggestion that I give, and a lot of developers don't do it, and I don't understand why they don't do it, but it's use social media for your own benefit. Don't use it to look at silly pictures of cats, even if those are hilarious and you should look at those. Those are great. But if you find, for example, you're looking to learn Laravel and you find Laracast and you see that it has a lot of reviews and a lot of videos and people are using it, go on Twitter. Tweet to search for the Jeffrey Wade, the founder of Laracast, and ask him question like, where should I learn? Where should I start? Just open a Twitter account, start following many different developers that you found on GitHub or other YouTube channels, and ask them direct advices. I feel overwhelmed with your 200 videos. Which one should I start like watching?
Yes.
And it's a great advice. It's something that I missed a lot when I started, because if I found a book that had some good information but some shitty code in it, and I wanted to double check if the code was correct or actually I was doing something wrong, contacting the author of the book was impossible. Like, not a chance that he will ever answer to you. Instead, right now, it's like really easy to directly talk with the owner or the author of specific resource, or even you can even contact online on JavaScript the founder, the creator of JavaScript, which is mind blowing. You can ask him like, how should I start learning JavaScript? And he has the answer to that. So definitely like don't jump directly into learning and consuming tutorial at like double of the speed just to, I want to learn as quick as possible, because you're going to fry your brain. Just do your research and try to understand your resource. Like, what is the best place that you enjoy and you like learning? Because also everyone, it's a personal thing. Like you cannot like, probably someone likes a book, someone likes a video, someone likes a whatever other things. It's not that one resource is good for everyone.
Yeah, everybody learns completely differently. For me, if I don't code along with a tutorial, if I don't actually write it myself, I'll immediately forget it. So
oh, that's true. Yes. Another question related to how to properly learn new things is that I had this question many times asked in my tutorials. After, I don't know, the user starts my tutorials at lesson 1, 2, 3, and then I reach lesson 5 and I get these questions. Oh, we are at lesson 5. I already forgot what we did in lesson 1. How can I remember this thing? How can I not just follow tutorials and then after 2 weeks having a blank mind, like not remembering anything? Well, what would you suggest?
I would suggest, I mean, as frustrating as it can be, to rewatch it, follow along, do exactly what the person doing the tutorial is doing, and just try to really understand why they're doing something, as opposed to, oh, I just typed these commands. But yeah, when you're learning something new, especially when you've not done any programming and you're watching these tutorials, it's going to be a lot of information, and it's going to take a while for it to really sink in and for you to start remembering the concepts and the reasons that you're doing certain things.
Yeah, indeed. So, another suggestion I would give, and every time I give this suggestion, the answer is like, oh, but it's boring, I don't want to do it, is yes, rewatch the tutorial, but then try to code the examples of the tutorial like a couple of extra times without watching the tutorial. So because it's normal, like when you're following a tutorial and you code, it's basically I'm telling you, or the author of the teacher is telling you what to write. So you don't think of actually what are you writing if it's correct, and you're not using your brain to memorize what you're writing. You're just like following along. And after that, now you have the complete examples that works at the end of the tutorial. Now try to redo it by yourself. You still have that examples that if you don't remember something, you can look at it, but try to rewrite it and rebuild it without following the tutorials. Try to remember what did you do. And while you're doing that, try to change things and try to break it. You have a working example, try to break it and see why it's breaking and how to fix it and stuff like that. Even if it's as simple as a drop-down menu that it's super boring, but just like do it, code it by yourself. That's my main advice.
Yeah, that's a really good one, is to look at what you've done and try to add on to it or play with it, or like you said, break it and just see like, oh, what if I add this here? What'll happen? And I think when you start like exploring and just playing with things, you can start figuring out what's going on.
Yeah, absolutely. I had some questions related to this with WordPress. It's like a lot of users were asking, what should I do? Should I buy or just download a ready-made WordPress template and then tweak it and change it? Or should I start from scratch? My advice would be, if you have no idea how WordPress works and you need a finalized product, something that works and it's out of the box, so definitely grab a template that it's built and does probably 90% what you need, and then try to tweak it slowly and see why the things are breaking and see if you can implement something without breaking stuff, because you have a working example that you can always revert back and you have something that works. And it's something that has pros and cons, because it could be frustrating from the point of view that you have these big source code that you have no idea how it works and you're kind of like confused. But also you have these big source code that works and it gives you the finalized example of how your code should be at the end. So yeah, it's kind of like pros and cons at the same time, like for everything.
Yeah, and along with that, looking at open source software that people have out there, you know, like if there's a certain plugin that you are using on WordPress and you're like, I want to know how that works, you can probably find the code somewhere on GitHub.
Yeah.
And that's also a really good place to, you know, put your own code, or to, like, if there's a plugin and you're like, oh, I wish it had this extra option, you know, try to code it yourself and create a pull request and see what the author has to say. You know, when you're new, they're probably going to tell you like, oh, you're doing this wrong, you're doing this wrong, maybe do this differently. But that's how you learn, is from working with people that are more experienced than you.
Oh, definitely. That's a really good point that I didn't think about it. But can you elaborate on this, like how a new developer should actually use GitHub or Bitbucket or GitLab, all these repositories online?
Yeah, it's you know, it's a great place to put your code examples. You know, you can share them with potential employers if you've got a good portfolio and you're like, hey, look, I'm a great PHP developer. Look at some of these projects, and it's just a great place for you to just store your code in a safe way as well. To, you don't have to worry about, oh, my hard drive crashed and I've lost everything.
Yes, so many times.
It's happened. So it's a great place to kind of network with code, and I mean, you can see, like, every once in a while I look back at some of my old projects and I'm like, oh, that was terrible. I made horrible decisions. This doesn't make sense.
Yes.
And you can kind of see a history of your own progress and see where you've come from, and you know, how horrible you used to be and how much better you are now. And then in a year you'll look back and be like, well, a year I was still terrible. And
yes, but at least now I know that I'm terrible. Like before I was so confident, oh, this is good. Now I know this is not good at all.
Yeah, exactly. And you'll create a pull request to something, and I mean, I've had it before where people are like, this is a bad idea and we're not going to put it in there. And it's like, okay,
yeah,
well,
true.
I learned something, you know.
Indeed. Yeah, that's a really good example. And the beautiful thing about GitHub is that it's not stealing. Like, you can access the source code and copy paste a snippet of code that it works. And it's not stealing. You're not stealing, as far as you don't just download the entire repository and then resell it to someone as yours. Don't do that. That's shitty. But it's a great way to actually look at how people code, how they solve some problems. And one of the amazing thing about GitHub that I love is that you can keep browsing the issues of that repository, even if those are closed. So you can see that you will realize soon that pretty much everyone has your own problem, has the same problems as you have right now. And the majority of those problems were solved in the past. So you can browse the closed issues and say, oh, this guy actually had my same exact issue and solved it in this way. So that's the answer to my problems. And that's really helpful. Okay, so next question. It's something that every time I hear about this online, I get like kind of super annoyed, and it just drives me nuts. But have you ever heard those ads online, or even before a YouTube video, like the Udemy or Skillshare or Codecademy or other stuff? Like mostly it's Udemy. And I kind of hate Udemy because a lot of times my tutorials were re-uploaded on Udemy and they didn't do anything about it. And a guy was selling my tutorials. Oh, wow. Yeah, I was like, that's why. Udemy, it's great. It's a great place. They don't check anything. Also, you could have find like Laracast's free video on Udemy sold by someone else. So yeah, that happens. But yeah, ads from Udemy that says, I got hired after 2 months class without any background in technology, or I was studying like accounting and then I got bored and I took a class on PHP and now I'm a software engineer and I make $100,000 a year. All these type of like ads. How, like, do you hate them? Do you agree? What do you say?
Yeah, so there's a bit of myth and there's a bit of truth to these things. For the online courses, it's most likely a myth. Because with the courses, like especially Udemy, it's such a broad range of topics, going from not just coding, but even to like marketing things. And, it's just, there's so much stuff that you'd be easy to get sidetracked and just completely forget what you were working on.
Yeah.
The truth part is there are some boot camps, and they cost a lot of money for a reason, and they're very intensive. I know there's one here in San Antonio that's had like a 90-something% rate of graduates getting a job within so many months after leaving the boot camp.
Yeah.
But they are very intensive. It's you can't work a job and still do this at the same time. It's full days for 12 weeks with you're going home and writing homework code and writing apps. And I've talked to a couple of people that have taken the courses, and they're like, it's very intense. Like you're studying all day. And then afterwards they do network with local employers to help you get into like a very entry-level junior position. So there are those options, and they're usually very expensive. The online thing, I would not bet, oh, I'm going to pay $10 for this course and then I'm going to get a job afterwards.
Yes.
It's not going to happen. You could definitely take what you've learned from these courses and start building your own portfolio and start expanding on that. And maybe then you could use what you've learned to try to get into an entry-level position. But it's one of those, you get what you pay for. And
yes.
If it sounds too good to be true, it probably is.
Yes, that's the judgment. Like if it sounds too good to be true, yes, it's not true at all. Yeah, I agree with you. Like we have something similar here in Vancouver. I think it's called Lighthouse Workshop or something. But yeah, these boot camps are really like the real deal, because our 3 weeks or 4 weeks intensive work. And if like those are the shortest ones, sometimes you have these boot camps that go on for 3 months. And the difference between these type of workshops and these online courses is that in these real workshop, you actually build real life applications, something that you could potentially use. Instead, online, it's usually like the usual, like a to-do app, or like, let's build, I don't know, an agenda online with serverless things just in JavaScript, something that as soon as you step out of the tutorial environment, it won't work. Like it's not suitable for an actual product. It's something that is just an example that you're doing to learn. And I don't know if you had the same feeling, but that's also one of the reasons why I started doing tutorials online, releasing tutorials online, because every time I see, or I used to try to follow these tutorials online, I always felt they were incomplete. Always felt they were like keeping information from me, and I don't know why. And then I understood why, because if they give you all the information at once, you don't have to buy the next course, you don't have to buy the next class. You just know already everything in the first one. So yeah, the online thing is definitely a myth, and I don't think if you just follow part-time or on the side after your day job during night, you follow those online classes for 2-3 months. Yes, if you're really skilled, you could probably find a job, but then you're gonna have so many issues because you skipped a lot of important milestones and important information that as soon as you have an issue, you have no idea. You don't have the background knowledge to tackle that issue and understand it. Instead, like these boot camps, they give you these background knowledge. They want to be sure, because they cost a lot of money. They want to be sure that you understand how the things it works, and not just copy this code, do this, that it works. It's fine. Who cares about the why? So definitely.
Yeah.
So yeah, fuck you to me. No, I gotta cut this probably. But yeah, but yeah, don't get like flashed by the fancy life of these guys that they make a lot of money and they look so happy online, just following online classes. That could happen, but it once in a million. Instead, as you said, these classes, these courses, workshops, and bootcamps, they have statistics to back up their price and their decisions. And those stats are really important, like a 93 to 97% of employment after 2 months of the end of the bootcamp. It's an amazing, it's just a really high stats. It's something that, yeah, it makes you consider it, and you should definitely consider it.
Right, and part of that is the networking that the company does for you. They know a lot of companies, they know a lot of people that work at these companies. Whereas, Udemy is just a course. They don't know anybody in your local area. They're not going to actually help you with the, getting your foot in the door, getting that first interview. So
I'd say like Udemy and all these other stuff online are kind of good if you already have some knowledge of something and you want to maybe refine it, and you find a course that it's like specific on, I don't know, like understanding the middlewares of Laravel, something really specific that, but you already have the knowledge. Like I shouldn't use them if you're like completely starting from scratch. It's not a good approach. It's really overwhelming, and the informations are scattered around, and it's not good.
No, yeah, I mean they have they do a lot of specials too, where it's like, oh, any of these courses for $10, and I've bought a couple for different things where it's like, I already know a broad amount of this, but I want to specifically learn this, so it can be good for those things, as long as they're not stealing it from somebody.
Exactly, that's the thing. That's super annoying, but whatever. Okay, next question. There are actually two questions together. So what's good to have in a portfolio? What's a recruiter looking at when they have to decide to hire a developer? And how to make actually a portfolio, how to build and fill up your portfolio when you don't have work experience. So you just follow a 2 months class on Udemy and you want to try to find a job and you want to try to apply, and you haven't done any work. So what you put in your portfolio?
Yeah, so the first big thing you have to ask yourself is, what kind of job am I trying to get? For me, I've never worked in like an agency. I've always worked with companies where all my work is internally used. It's not something I can share screenshots of. I can't, point people to a website and be like, oh, I built this. So for me, it was more of code examples in GitHub, and just, writing my resume and talking about what I've done. So it's kind of like a, oh, you could fake it in a way, like, you can make up your resume. But, once you get your job and they realize you really don't know what you're doing, then it's not going to work out well. But for starting from the beginning, when you have no experience, one thing I've seen a lot of people say online, like on Reddit to some of these new developers, is just make up a company, make up a pet spa or, a restaurant, and just try to make a website for this made up business, add fake content, grab free stock images off the internet and make an about page, and just do a few of those and show, like, I want to work in, let's say, web design. I want to work for an agency. Here's some example websites that I've built, and you can put them up on, GitHub pages or, a DigitalOcean droplet or whatever, and actually point people to it and be like, here, go to this website. This is what I've done. This is what I can do. And that gives a good working example where somebody can see exactly what you've done, how it works, and you could even have, since these are fake companies, put it on GitHub and be like, here's the code that runs this site. You can see it for yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. I had a similar issue actually when I moved to Canada 4 years ago, because I worked in Italy for 8 years as a developer, and I built pretty much just websites for Italian businesses, only Italian businesses. A lot of those websites were like also protected. Like I built some energy consumptions calculator. That was a really intense PHP project that I built for Barilla, the pasta maker, and it was like an enterprise protected, like admin related project. So only the employees of Barilla were allowed to actually look at the project, and that was kind of like my milestone of the everything that I did. So that was the perfect portfolio piece, but I wasn't allowed to put it as a portfolio piece because it was like protected and all these laws and limitations and stuff. So when I moved to Canada, my portfolio was really scarce for like 8+ years of experience as a developer. Like I didn't have much, and a lot of examples were outdated, and all the examples also were in Italian. So the potential employer was looking at these websites and was like, I don't understand this. Like, okay, yeah, it looks good, but I like, if I want to use a backend or want to see the functionalities that you built, it's hard for me to browse it. So what I did was spending, before moving to Canada, spending literally the 3 months of my summer recoding pretty much all the things that I liked of my previous works. I recoded them, repackaged as small applications, and put them on GitHub. So I feel up until that time, my GitHub account was completely empty. Like I just had an account to follow other developers, but I never uploaded anything on GitHub because I didn't need it actually. And that's a really shitty excuse, but you should never do that. You should always put something on GitHub. Right. So I forced myself to recode stuff that I already did, but of course in English, and make them personal, like not using the logo of the clients that I worked for, and just building these small applications, small examples. And it's funny because when I moved here, all the works that I got, all the jobs or the employment or the employers that contacted me, they did it through my GitHub account or website where I had my examples. So I had like a jQuery slider, really simple jQuery slider, but I add some fancy things. And the former employer of my old company contacted me and said like, oh, I really like this example. We have a front end position open. Are you interested in it? And stuff like that. So definitely don't think as a portfolio as only showcase real life examples, like actual work. You can build a portfolio with made up things. And you're building the usual to-do app, the usual sticky notes app, or all these kind of things. Try to create an interface with it, or try to create a fancy backend stuff that you want to implement for yourself. You have an idea, implement it and put it online. That's definitely worth it. Like every time you have a code that is not proprietary. How do you say?
Yeah, it's a proprietary.
Proprietary. Yeah. These
words,
I have
trouble saying.
Oh, sorry, it's not me. Well, where it's free, you can put it online. Just put it online. And in my previous company, I was doing also recruitment, and I hired a bunch of developers. And the first thing was, can you give me your GitHub account? I want to look at your repositories. I want to look at how your code is done, how you wrote your code, if you write documentation, if you wrote a good README file and stuff like that. So that's the thing.
Yeah, and for smaller examples, there's always CodePen.
Yes.
For front-end development, there's, tons of inspirational stuff on that site, and a great place to just play with little things that you're like, oh, look at this cool little thing I made with, CSS only or whatever. There's Dribble for more design. Which is not something I have experience with. I think you recently started putting some stuff on Dribble.
Oh yeah, well. The Dribble approval process is kind of weird. Like you sign up and they pick you randomly, because if you sign up, you cannot upload things. You're blocked. You're just like a user, a watcher, and then they draft you, and you start uploading things. And if your designs or examples, they get enough views, enough likes, then they promote you as a regular user. Otherwise you're blocked on uploading. You cannot upload as like too many examples per month. You're kind of like limited features and stuff like that.
Interesting.
Yeah, but instead of Dribble, like if you want to start like also as a designer or a front-end developer, Behance from Adobe, it's really great. You have like a lot of features to really showcase your work, and there are some great examples of UX designers or front-end developers in there. So Behance is definitely the way to go. So let's say, for example, let's split it into main branches, like a front-end developer and a back-end developer. For a front-end developer, what it's good and what should be absolutely necessary to have in a portfolio. And also, that's a question that a friend of mine asked. What is the proper amount of repositories or like examples to have in a portfolio? What is too much? What is not enough? How much is the right number?
Right. I don't know. I mean, that kind of depends. Like, I mean, are you talking about for like if you're trying to get a job?
Yeah, exactly. Let's say
place?
like front end and you want to apply to a job and you're building your portfolio for that specific front end position.
Yeah. Well, I would say you can't have too much. There, you know, you just have a ton, then that's gonna be great. I think it really depends on the position. If it's entry level, they're, you know, looking for people just out of school or just out of these boot camps. You know, just having a couple or 3 examples might be fine. Or maybe even just one good example that's, you know, a very large application that you built, as opposed to, you know, 3 small ones.
Yeah.
So I don't know if there's any particular like magic number. You know, I think finding a job and interviewing, it takes practice, and it takes time. And I remember looking for my first job, and I must have applied to 50 positions and been interviewed by, you know, 3 of them. And, you know, it wasn't until the last one that I got a job. So, you know, it takes practice, and it just takes the right one to see your work and be like, this is enough for me. This is good enough for me to say, I want to take this person and train them. Because really your first job is going to be training.
Yeah.
They're not going to expect you. And that's another thing a lot of developers have is imposter syndrome. You know, they get that first job and they're like, I don't feel like I actually know what I'm doing. And an employer who's hiring you, especially at an entry level or junior position, they don't expect you to come in the first day and just start working on the product and knocking out features. It's not going to happen.
Yeah.
So
That's true. Yeah, the imposter syndrome. I still have that. I don't know, like everyone has that. Like,
yeah, I do too.
Yeah, it's like that. It's never going away. You're always gonna feel like, yeah, I'm not good enough for this role, even if you're like the lead developer that everyone is asking you advice and you actually give them solutions and stuff. You're still gonna think, like, this is not good. Like, I'm not good. But yeah, from my point of view, a good portfolio piece, especially on GitHub, just because I'm a control freak, I would say like 6 examples, because those 6 examples, they fill perfectly the 6 slots of your portfolio, like your front page of GitHub profile. And it looks really tidy and nice. But I like your suggestion that probably it's better to have a big project, something kind of complicated, where you can flex your muscles and just showcase that, hey, I'm good at this, instead of really like, I don't know, 6 really small single page, or just like really small examples that you can find pre-built code online. That could be a good thing. Or also, that's this friend of mine, he's 32 and he's fed up with his career. Like, he's a teacher. He teaches Chinese. It's amazing. Yeah. He spent a lot of time in Taiwan. He learned like Taiwanese and Chinese, and now he teaches Chinese here in Vancouver. But he started like tinkering with development and coding, and now he learned like vanilla JavaScript, and now he started to learn React. And his goal is for the end of the year to apply for a front-end position as a React developer. And he wants to do that. He's really committed, and he's been working and studying for almost 6 months. And now he's building his portfolio. And he asked me exactly this question, like, what should I put in my portfolio? And the suggestion that I gave him, because he's really good and he grasped a lot better React than me, actually. Like, I have no idea how React works. But yeah, the advice is that use your knowledge of what you already know, for example, like languages, and build kind of like a complicated application that doesn't exist in React for the languages thing. So now he's building this translation type of visual translation of ancient Chinese into like modern English, and it's really, really interesting. That's cool. That's a big project that he's working on for the past 2 months. And then on the side, he's going to build the usual 2-3 super small applications, something like transitions or like the usual send a contact form or stuff like that. So a big app that helps you to challenge yourself and showcase, hey, I can build small things, but I can also build big things. It's a good advice.
Yeah, and going with a big application, you're going to run into things that you're going to run into more with an actual job. With React or Vue, it's easy to make a 2 or 3 component little app that does something,
Yeah.
but in reality, when you have all these components that need to share data and share state, then you start getting into, okay, well, now I need to think about having Redux in here or Vuex for Vue. Or I need this third-party library for this, and so building something larger will show that you can overcome those challenges of what's the best thing for this situation.
Yeah, absolutely. That's true. Um, yeah, another question like related to this is that also this friend of mine asked, is it good that I'm not using like these big words or like this technical jargon online? Like he's building his own applications with like a JSON file has a database. Instead, he's wondering like, should I learn like how to build like a serverless application or leverage like Lambda functions of AWS or leverage like the Firebase database of Google and stuff like that? Should I expand this? And my advice is that because you're applying as an entry level, as a junior position, you don't need those. I don't think there's any employer that is expecting you as a junior developer to already know everything about serverless functions or like serverless applications and the ability to connect to third-party APIs with no problems. Of course, if you have those skills, it's better, but then those skills they're gonna take up so much time to learn that you can definitely learn them while you're working on like when you're employed, and you can get advice from a senior developer in the company and work on a real project instead of delaying like, okay, I'm not gonna apply for another 6 months until I have the full knowledge of what I know. So what do you think?
Oh, I completely agree. Focus on the core, the core learning that you need to do. Focus on, like, he wants to be a React developer. Focus on the React. Don't worry about building a backend or handling any of those APIs or the serverless. Firebase. I like Firebase. It's pretty cool. But as just an entry level, if you come in and you say, I'm an entry level employee and I know React really well, I can build a React app, then the rest can be trained. Companies understand that. They spend the time to put you with a developer that has a lot more experience, and they can give you, oh, here's tasks that you know how to do in React, so you can do that really well. And once you get to the point where we need to start integrating with Firebase, for instance, or a Lambda function in AWS, let's co-code it, code together, and or let me explain it, and maybe you try it a little bit, you get stuck, come back to me. So there's always going to be learning in the workplace.
Definitely, yeah.
So yeah, definitely focus on the fundamentals and the core thing that you want to work in.
Yeah, absolutely. Another related question to this that also ties with the next one is when a developer should know when it's ready to actually apply for a job. And that's a really tricky one because it's really personal. When did you, from your experience, when did you start applying? When did you feel like, okay, now I can apply for something, I can apply for a position?
Yeah, so I went to college. I got a degree in computer science. Went to school from 2005 to 2009. And at that time, most development positions required a bachelor's degree or equivalent experience. And without any experience, that was kind of my only option at the time. Nowadays, it's quite different. If I had a kid that was about to graduate high school and they wanted to do web development, I may not persuade them to do a computer science degree. It kind of depends on where they wanted to go with, what kind of work they want to do. But for me, so my senior year in college, I started going to the Career Center. We had a great Career Center at school where they did mock interviews. It was pretty awkward. They had a video camera in there, like staring at your face, and you would answer these questions, and they
Whoa.
would coach you on it, and then give you the DVD so you could watch yourself. And it was, it
That
was
sounds
pretty crazy.
terrible.
Yeah, yeah, but they you kind of went over all the general questions, and you can look up all these questions
Hmm.
online of just general interview questions. Where do you see yourself in 5 years, and what
Hmm.
is your biggest weakness, and all that. Um, but for me, I started applying that winter. I didn't graduate till May, and I didn't get my first job until like October, September that year. So it took me a good 8 or 9 months to land my first job. Um, so I say, as soon as you want to start practicing,
Hmm.
just start applying, because
Yeah.
you're not going to get the first job you interview with. You're not going
Yeah.
to get the first job you apply to. But interviewing with these companies and having a bad interview, you're going to walk away with understanding more of what happens in the interview, what it's like to be in front of, I had an interview in front of like 5 senior developers,
Hmm.
and I was a junior. Like it was terrifying,
Yeah.
but it was a good learning experience. And so after you do that several times, you start to feel more comfortable. You're able to, when you're more comfortable, it's easier for you to remember, certain words or the things they're asking you. Your first interview, you're gonna be so nervous that you're gonna be like, I don't know what a boolean is. It
Yes.
happens. So,
Yes.
um, I say, as if you know some development and you want to take the next step and start trying to interview,
Hmm.
to just go ahead and try it.
Yes, absolutely. And the advice that I will always give, and the thing is that I always say to everyone that starts doing this, is that it doesn't exist a bad interview. Like,
Hmm.
even the worst interview ever, like, if you can think of the worst that could happen, I don't know, your pants are on fire, or like you pee yourself for the emotion, or like whatever, it's experience. And when you're starting, when you're a junior, it's just like, it's not that, okay, you botch an interview and the next one, the other employer will not even talk to you because you botched the previous interview. Like, it doesn't matter. It's just
Yeah.
experience for you in
Mhm.
preparation of the actual interview, that it's gonna be good. And it's also is not always the developer's fault. Sometimes interviews are terrible because the employer or the interviewer is not
Mhm.
good at doing interviews. So it's making the other person really uncomfortable, and
Mhm.
is not asking the right questions. Like, I had a friend that I have a friend that he does consulting, like technical consulting for companies. And sometimes one of the main things that he has to teach these companies, or like these employers, are how to make proper interviews, how to do
Mhm.
interviews, because they ask super weird questions that sometimes are not even related to the job, but just because they read online, okay, these are the questions that you're supposed to ask. So if you
Mhm.
feel uncomfortable, if you feel like they're challenging you in a bad way, not in a positive way, and you feel like this interview is not going well, probably it's a good thing that it's not going well, because you're not suitable
Mhm.
for that position, and that employer is not suitable for you. It's not, you're not going to have a good relationship probably. You can learn a
Yeah.
lot from these bad interviews, that you can increase
Mhm.
your knowledge baggage. Yeah.
Yeah, and from my experience, half of the interview is really just figuring out if is this person a good personality fit for our team.
Hmm.
I used to do some interviews, and to make anybody feel a little better, being on the other side of the table is pretty nervous. I was pretty nervous as well, just interviewing people.
Yeah.
So don't go in there thinking that you're like in the hot seat and you're the only one nervous. Like the interviewers probably are as well.
Yeah.
Um, but I think good advice would just be to be yourself. um, if you try to like fake a personality and you get the job, then you find out that these people are not the kind of people you really want to work with.
Hmm.
That was one thing that my director told me when I started interviewing people was, look at their personality. Is it somebody that you could see working with? Because at the end of the day, you're going to spend 40 plus hours a week
Hmm.
in the same room with this person. Um, if it's someone you're not going to get along with, then it doesn't matter how great of a developer they are. I worked with a developer who was very experienced and a great developer, but everybody hated the guy because he was just a jerk. And so, you
Oh
know,
man, those
it
jerks, yes.
yeah, it doesn't work out well.
Yeah.
So, you know, there's the technical skills, but there's also just the, you know, how well you get along with the interviewer, and
Mhm.
it may not have anything to do with your personality being bad or anything. It's like you said, it could be the interviewer. You know, this is somebody that you're going to either work with or work under.
Mhm.
And if it's somebody who you're like, I don't like this person, then, you know, it might be a good idea for you to walk away if they offer you the job.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And always remember that they need you
Yes.
more than you need them. Because as a developer, especially in this moment, in this day and age, there are so many offers that you can literally like pick, I don't know, just like throw a rock and you're gonna hit
Mm-hmm.
a job offer like
Mm-hmm.
randomly. It's just so easy to find offers, and everyone needs a developer. It doesn't matter the type of company, even not a tech company, they need a developer. So
Mm-hmm.
like you have so many possibilities, and it's not that as soon as you find an interview or you hit that interview or you get the job, or you're gonna, I don't know, will never find a job anymore in your entire life. No, it's the opposite. Like it's so hard, and I talk for personal experience. When I was doing recruitment, it's so hard to find a good developer or a person that can you start in a couple of weeks? No, I
Mm-hmm.
can't. Like
Yeah.
it's really hard to find a developer that suits that's suitable for the company. So employers need you more than you need them. So just
Mm-hmm.
use that at your advantage. Just
Yeah.
ask and be comfortable, be confident. Don't be cocky, but don't even be like, don't feel like you're under scrutiny and they're gonna judge you, and if they judge you badly it's a super bad thing, and it's gonna like you're gonna have this stigma for the rest of your life. No, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. It's just like
Yeah.
try to, it's like go in a bar and try to know a new person. That's it. It's just like
Yeah.
mostly 80% of the decision making process is about personality, as you said, because technical skills can be learned. If they
Mm-hmm.
called you for the interview, that means that your portfolio fits what they need.
Mm-hmm.
And if they
Yeah.
want to talk to you, is because they want to learn who you are, like how you talk and how you interact with people. They want to learn your personality, and they want to understand you. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, that's the thing. What do you think about the say fake it till you make it?
Yeah, I mean that's an interesting term for getting a job because you know, there's only so much faking you can do, and then you're put in a
Yes.
seat where you're working and you can't do it. So, um, I don't know how to answer that
Yeah.
one.
Yeah, I know. I say like try to never do it. Try to
Yeah.
always be real, because if you even fake it and then you get hired, and then the first time you have an issue and hey, but you said you know how to do these
Hmm.
things, it's gonna be terrible.
Yeah.
That's gonna be really bad. But if you reach a certain point, a certain level, and for example, like stupid examples, if you work with Laravel for a year and they asked
Mhm.
you, do you know everything about Laravel? You can say yes, even if you don't know everything about Laravel, and it's impossible probably to know everything, every single
Mhm.
aspect. But you can say yes, absolutely, because you have the experience. You're not like the founder of Laravel, like the author of Laravel, so you don't know every single aspect, every single method, but you can probably deal with it. And if you don't know
Yeah.
something, because you have experience, you can learn it super quickly. So that type of faking it, it's okay.
Yeah.
But always like, yeah, be reasonable, and it's
Hmm.
good.
Yeah. Another thing I wanted to bring up,
Hmm.
at least here in the United States, there's a lot of recruitment companies that basically get paid to find companies good employees.
Oh yeah.
Um, and so on LinkedIn, which is a really good professional networking site, there's an option that you can set saying like, I am available to, I'm looking for a job.
Hmm.
And it tells the recruiters in your area, this person's looking for a job. So what happens at that point is you'll start getting just messages like crazy
Oh
from
yeah.
recruiters. And you can meet up with these people, you can get free lunches, and you'll go through basically an interview with them. So it's a good way to practice interviewing with just all these people that are willing to take you to lunch. You know, hey, here's some food, and let's talk about your skills. And it's a good way to practice. And if it doesn't work out with a recruiter, then they're just not going to try to find you a job.
Yeah.
But, you know, big deal. There's 1,000 other ones on LinkedIn in your area, you know, so.
Exactly, absolutely. There's also then we're gonna switch to the next question, but there's also another question that I get asked like a lot from my audience, especially my audience is coming from like the Middle East or like India, China and stuff like that. A lot of them, they're looking, especially in the development world, in order to relocate. They want to just move out of their countries because of many different reasons and stuff like that. And the web development environment, like the developer's job, it's one of the rarest jobs that allows you to do it, allows you to relocate easily. And a lot of these users, they ask like, should I first move to the place where I want to find a job, or should I start doing interviews remotely? Am I even gonna be considered for this interview if I don't live there? My answer is absolutely yes. Like remote working is becoming more and more a thing. Like no one wants to spend anymore like 8 to 10 hours per day, same desk in the same office. Even like big corporations are allowing users or are allowing employees to work remotely. And Upwork is one of like the biggest example. Like you can literally like sign up on Upwork and get a job and get paid by someone that you don't even meet. You just do the job and whatever you want, like from whatever location, your home, and you get paid for that specific job. So absolutely apply for online interviews. Like technology is there. Like technology, it's so helpful now with Slack or Skype or Appear.in or all these like web interfaces that you can use to have a conversation like in the same room. It's totally fine. Just absolutely do it.
Yeah, I've been working out of my house now for a little over 3 years. And before this, I was driving 45 minutes to an hour each way to work. You know, some days when there was a bad accident on the road and you're just sitting there forever, just sitting in your car. And I was like, you know, I'm tired of this. I want to get those 2 hours back because, you know, and plus all the miles and gas on the car and everything. Yeah, and this last position I took back in May, it was a requirement. I was like, I've been working remote. I'm not going back to the office. And I knew I was going to be relocating to the East Coast, back to Georgia, and we're going to move in a few weeks. And I can just shut down my laptop, move across the country, Monday morning, open it up, and I'm back at work. So it's something that you can do from anywhere in the world, and it's getting more and more popular. And another thing is, you know, when you work for a company, you get very limited vacation. Especially here in the United States, you know, normally you only get about 2 weeks. So like this job, when I took the position, we had already had plans to go to Japan for 2 weeks in the fall, and I didn't have the vacation time. So I asked them, I was like, well, can I just work, you know, in the middle of the night in Japan? And they're like, yeah, that's fine. So I took my laptop and worked from Japan for a week. So.
How was the connection in Japan?
Japan was pretty good. They actually had pretty good internet where we were, well, at least in Tokyo. A couple of other places were a little more, you know,
shady.
Not too great, but
Awesome. I visited Japan too in the fall last year. No, it was spring. It was like April. So it was like the Hanami season, like with the cherry blossom. And we're thinking to actually relocate there for a couple of months because my fiance, she studied Japanese languages when she was in high school and university, and she graduated in Japanese culture. So moving there, she would like to relearn Japanese because of course she forgot it. Like if it's a language that if you don't practice it every day, like you forget it. So that's one of the plan, like relocating. And my employer right now is like, he's totally fine. Yes, you can work overnight or as far as you hit the deadlines and you're present and you don't just like disappear completely. It's totally fine. You just daily check-ins. Working remotely is the dream. It's like so good.
Yeah, that's what I would do is we'd have our morning scrum meetings at like 10 p.m. Japanese time.
Hmm.
So I'd just be up late, do my meeting, check in with my architect, do some code reviews, and then I'd go to bed and I'd work when it was middle of the night US time,
Hmm.
and I would just get my work done while everybody else was sleeping.
Yeah,
So
yeah, absolutely doable.
Mhm.
So let's say that we pretty much cover the full process. So you have to decide what you do, you learn how you learn, you prepare your portfolio, you just like try to engage these recruiters to have some experience. Now it's time for the god awful technical interview. And those, I am the worst. I always botch those in the
Yeah.
worst way possible.
Well, luckily the whole whiteboard interview thing is kind of going away. I have
Yeah.
not seen that in years. Those were horrible where they just tell you, I want you to code this
Yeah.
on the whiteboard. And I don't memorize syntax, and especially with web development, you're jumping between all these languages all the time.
Hmm.
I'm like, I can't remember how you do a switch in JavaScript. I still look that up. How do you do a switch
Yeah.
statement in JavaScript? I can't remember.
Yeah, me too.
So, yeah, so I think those have gone away, and those are terrible. But
Hmm.
especially at entry level, it's, try to relax and just tell them what you know. You're going to forget things that you know well just
Hmm.
because you're nervous.
Yeah.
Um, but I think it just comes down to practice and getting used to it and learning what kind of technical questions
Hmm.
that this job you're trying to get. If
Hmm.
you're specifically looking for, an Angular job, what kind of questions are the people wanting an Angular developer wanting to know?
Hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And 100% you don't have to remember everything.
Mhm.
Like it's impossible. No one
Yes.
does, not even the recruiter. Like they asked you those questions, even if they're super technical, they looked at those questions 5 minutes before asking you.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
they have them written on a piece of paper. They don't remember those things.
Mhm.
Absolutely. Um, and just like to give an example, in my last technical interview that I did, I actually challenged the interviewer because it was kind of like pissing me off. Because it was like the first question was like the first technical question after the usual random questions during the interview was like, how do you manage a server when you have like a workload or you have like you're exhausting bandwidth and you're having issues, so the current size of your server is not suitable anymore for your application, what you're doing, for the amount of traffic that you're getting. So I answer with the usual things like, okay, you set it up. Our server is on AWS. You set it up for auto scaling. You use step functions to delegate some computing things, so you don't just always have up and running everything that you consume CPU, and you can always pay more and expand the hardware of your server. You can upgrade
Mhm.
the CPU, extend the RAM, and there are like a bunch of different things. But of course, it's related to the situation. You cannot always give the full list of solutions because it's something that it's really unique. And when you have a problem, you're gonna investigate and find a solution. And this guy was keep asking like, yeah, but tell me, what do you actually gonna do? Like, tell me all the steps that you're gonna
What
do.
buttons are you gonna click?
Yeah, it was at that point like, yeah, but tell me more. Like it didn't
Mhm.
accept any of my answer and was keep asking like, tell me what. Like at the end, like after the fourth time that he asked me the same thing, I was like, what's the point? Like, I'm not gonna answer to you because first, I don't know what I'm gonna actually do if I don't have the situation in front of me. Like, I have no idea. And second, what's the point? Like, okay, I can look it up at the technical manual or like read the documentation of AWS and just write single step one by one. Anyway, tomorrow I'm gonna forget it. I have to relook at it. So why you keep asking this? This is a stupid question. Stop asking this. Like, ask me something else. So like,
Yeah.
if you're not satisfied, just stop and ask me something else or send me
Yeah.
away. Stop asking the same question. So most of the times, and then I found out the actual recruiter didn't have a technical background,
Mhm.
so it wasn't actually understanding my answers.
Yeah.
That was the other issue. So even a technical interview is the same thing. Like the recruiter is nervous as well. They don't know anything. Like they didn't memorize everything. It's
Mhm.
impossible. And always try to understand like the level of question that they ask you. If you're applying for an entry position and they ask you a question that is too advanced and you have no idea, just say it, like, oh, I have no idea about this. Like, be completely honest, and it's gonna be fine.
Yeah, it's much better to say you don't know something than to make something up that's most likely going to be completely wrong.
Yes, exactly. Did you have any like nightmare stories or nightmarish interviews related to technical interviews?
Yeah, I had, like I mentioned earlier, I was, pretty early in my career, and I was sitting in a room with about 4 or 5 senior engineers, the lead engineer, um, and the one guy that was the lead, he kept asking me pretty tough technical questions. But on top of it, he had a extremely thick Indian accent. So it's like every question he asked me, I had to ask him to repeat it like 3 times. And then when I finally get the question, I'd be like, oh, I don't know.
Yeah.
So it was, it was definitely one of those situations where I learned, okay, I don't have these types of skills, and, what kind of jobs I should be looking for, because that one was more outside of what I was used to. I was doing a lot of like Python development, or like Ubuntu. I think it was GTK with Python, building some apps, doing a little bit of PHP to work with a CMS that we were using at the time. And this was more of building like C# programs interfaced with like radio towers. And so it was a lot of like hardware that I was not familiar with at all. Like I knew nothing about radio, about these antennas and the devices and everything. So it was just, it was like, okay, I need to really rethink about what I know and what kind of jobs I can focus in on.
Yeah,
What
absolutely.
about you? Do you have a pretty bad one?
Since I moved to Canada, pretty much every interview was terrible. My experience was because of my lack of English knowledge, like the language skills. That was the worst part. I don't know if you know, but in Italy we love to translate everything, even like technical terms. So I learned programming in Italian, and all the wordings and technical terms were all Italian. So when they asked me here, what's a method? In Italian, we had the translation of method. It's function, basically. Like, it's more related to the word function than actual method. So when they asked me, like, what's a scope method or like a scope functions, for me, they were like, I don't know. If even I knew it, because I was working with scope functions pretty much every single day. Or like, how do you define a prototype in JavaScript? And I was like, oh my God, what the hell is a prototype in JavaScript? And I for me was like, oh, I never heard about a prototype. Instead, like, and that recruiter was like, but this is in your GitHub repository. Like, you wrote this in one of your example. You don't know what it is? I was like, oh yes, that's the thing. And I explained to him as I knew it in Italian. All this kind of stuff. So it was, my technical interviews were always the worst. The interesting part is that I was always be able to challenge the interviewer and tell them, like, okay, I have really serious lacks. Like, I'm not good at talking code because I don't have that experience. I've been like, up until I was 27, I didn't even speak English. So I'm sorry if I cannot understand your stuff. But look at my code. Ask me, I don't know, give me a homework. Tell me, like, code something, like build me this application, and I will get back to you in a week with that application built. Just look at my code. And I cannot read it to you. I cannot describe it to you because I'm not good at that. But I'm good at writing it. So...
and that is something that a lot of interviewers will give you, especially at the entry level position, is, hey, we've got this thing we want you to build, take 3 days, build this, it's usually something very small or something like kind of like a puzzle to figure out, just to see if, like, can you think logically, can you come up with the answer to this problem?
Yeah, absolutely. So don't get scared about technical interviews, and like everyone has terrible experience in those, and everyone botched them. I don't, yeah, honestly, I don't remember a single technical interview that went smoothly for me. I
Yeah.
had issues. I always had hiccups or like forgetting something so obvious. Like, I don't know.
Yeah.
It was like so bad. Yeah. And that's why, like, when I used to do recruitment, I actually never did a technical interview about something like foggy or like describe me, like how do you define a prototype in vanilla JavaScript. I never asked that. I usually
Mhm.
always check the code of the candidate, and I
Mhm.
if I find something that I don't really like in the code, I ask them like, why did you do this in your code? Why did you approach this solution or like this problem with this solution? Why you didn't try this other solution? So I discuss, I try to let them feel comfortable by presenting them what they wrote instead
Yeah.
of something like generic or like a
Mhm.
technical question that they never had before. So
Yeah, I think that's a really good way to go about it. When I've interviewed people, I've tried to stay away from technical questions as much as possible,
yeah.
because from talking to people, you'll get into technical just discussions about things. You know, you start asking them, how did you learn programming? Did you go to school?
Mm-hmm.
What did you study? Tell me about a project you did there, and you can start talking about those things in a way that's not very, like explain to me how this works, like
Mm-hmm.
define polymorphism.
Yeah.
So, um, it just really depends on your interviewer on what kind of questions you're going to get.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I think we are at the last question, and this was a question that they sent to you, right?
Yes, this one came from Brandon Benefield
Mm-hmm.
here in Florida, where I grew up, actually.
Mm.
He had a really good question about the importance of learning algorithms and data structures. He's saying that he does a lot of freelancing and is thinking about moving into joining a company or an agency. So, how important are algorithms and data structures, and how do you go about learning it?
Well, I don't think I'm the best one to answer this. Like honestly, I never got questions about algorithms during my technical
Mhm.
interviews. Never happened.
Mhm.
And I think it's getting like less and less requested or less and less. Yeah, it doesn't happen as much.
Mhm.
It really depends on your position. I don't know, like, do you know what this guy is, like a backend, a DevOps engineer? What does he do?
I think he does like WordPress websites from what I saw on his portfolio.
Okay, so as a former WordPress developer for almost my entire life, I'd say that no one cares about algorithms and data
Mhm.
structures in WordPress.
Yeah.
They want to know, like, can you build a WordPress template? Can you build a WordPress plugin? Do you know how to edit, decor, or make a WordPress website secure and safe, even with a lot of plugins and stuff like that? Um, Algorithms and data structures are more for DevOps engineers or someone that has to manage database pretty much the entire
Mhm.
day. Those are really important. And if you apply for that, yeah, you should learn. And probably they're going to ask you the difference between like SQL and NoSQL
Yep.
or stuff like that. But I don't know. Like, what do you think?
Yeah, no, I completely agree, especially if you don't have a lot of experience, if you're going into more of a mid-level, uh, you're not going to be expected to memorize, like explain what a bubble sort is, or so so I don't think it's really a big deal
Mm-hmm.
at all. I just had a question my architect asked me about something the other day about we're building this visualization of all this data because we do a lot of analytical work,
Mm-hmm.
and he was like, "Oh, let's just do a double linked list." And I was like, "Oh, like I haven't heard that term in years." Like,
Double linked list. Oh my God.
so
Yes.
it depends on what kind of work you're doing. If you're going to move into an agency where you're building WordPress sites for people, you're probably never going to come across that.
Yeah.
Um, if you're building, complex analytical work, you may.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but if you have experience just in development and you get this job, you're going to be learning it as you go.
Yeah.
You're going to have time to look on Stack Overflow
Oh, yeah.
or I mean, all the time on Stack Overflow.
Man, that's the
You know,
best.
you're going to have the time to look it up and get a better understanding of it. And
Hmm.
you're not going to be expected to just like, hey, first day of job, I need you to make this data run so much faster from the database. Like
Yeah.
it's, you know, you're going to be given plenty of time to figure those things out.
Yeah. And if that happens, that on your first day of job, they give you like the keys, access to the back end of the server and say, hey, fix this. Like,
Yeah.
that's something wrong in that company.
Yes.
Something definitely wrong. You should step away or like step back and say, hey, wait a second. But yeah, absolutely. I had a similar experience when I think like 6 or 7 years ago, I was in Italy. I was working as a WordPress developer, like really simple stuff. And then I got contacted by these big corporation that they have a lot of factories and farms around the world, and they wanted to build a software to calculate the environmental impact of those factories. So they needed an interface with multiple different access levels where employees from this factory were able to add the consumptions level of wood and coal and fuel and stuff like that, and then return the kilograms or like the tons of products that they built or that they released. And with those information, I should have been able to extrapolate the environmental impact, how much CO2 was getting released. And when they asked me, they're like, can you do that? I was like, no. I can build with PHP. I can build you the interface. You can add data in the database, but the calculation, I have no idea, especially. And they were like, oh, no problem. We have our engineers that they're going to give you the algorithms and you have to convert them into like PHP algorithms to just like replace those variables with data from the database, from the MySQL database. And that was it. Like that was pretty much in my 13 years of career, the only moment where I had to deal with algorithms wrote by someone else. So
yeah.
and those were kind of like complicated, and you need an engineer, you need someone that actually deals with algorithms for that type of thing. So if you're literally like a WordPress developer, and especially like if this guy said he's freelancing and he's thinking to get like a full-time job in a company, if you freelanced a lot, you have already a portfolio of WordPress websites, so you can apply as a WordPress developer. I don't think you're gonna have questions about algorithms and data structures. I don't think that will happen at all.
No, I completely agree. You know, if you were coming from more of like a back end, you know, if you've never really touched the front end, you're like, oh, I know everything about PHP and multi-threading and all this crazy stuff. They'd probably be asking you more about those types of things. But coming from more of a full stack or front end, I definitely agree. You're not going to really see that very often at all, if at all.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And as you said, like you're seeing like this trend of like less and less technical, really technical type of interviews, less whiteboards, examples, or coding. So
yeah,
because
I
it's
think a lot
normal.
of people.
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
Oh no worries. Go ahead.
Oh, I think a lot of people nowadays kind of see the value in taking in an entry-level person who hasn't really been exposed to bad practices yet.
Yes.
And you can kind of tell them like, oh, this is the way you're supposed to do it. Do it this way, you know.
Yeah, true, absolutely. So one last question, one last advice that I would like to give to junior developers is that don't be jealous of your own code, or don't be too private or too personal about your approaches. Always like try to find, I wouldn't say like find a mentor, because it's really hard to find a mentor, especially someone that you can relate and you can understand what it's saying, or you can sync on the same level to learn things. But find someone or multiple people that can help you to improve your code. And if you encounter like a senior developer that says, hey, this is actually wrong, you should write this in a better way, don't take it personally. Like it's never a personal thing. It's always a matter of like, look at your code with a critical eye, with like from a critical point of view, like always be critical about what you write. Never be, oh, this is my baby, I don't want to touch it, it's perfect like this. Don't be jealous, or don't be, I don't know, afraid that someone is going to destroy what you build. Everything should be used to improve yourself and to rethink your approach. Like, keep an open mind. Don't be like super like this.
Oh yeah, I mean, I do code reviews all the time between me and our architect, and you know, sometimes we'll get really nitpicky about those little things, and but you know, none of it's personal, and at the end of the day, we have a great code base that we're both pretty proud of, and you can't really tell which developer did what, because it all follows the same structure and same kind of code design and everything. So it's a great way to improve yourself, and to learn from other people, and you know, and to even disagree with people. It's great because you can talk about your opinions on something, and maybe you'll win, maybe you'll lose that argument, but you know, it's a great way to learn.
Yes, absolutely. I think we are at the end of the episode. It's like 1 hour and a half. There was a long ass podcast. I don't think I'm gonna edit anything about this because we didn't do any mistake. I guess I didn't use any bad swear words, so I think I'm kind of fine. Except that swear against you to me, but it's okay.
That's fine.
We can leave it like that. But yeah, so this episode is gonna be available, of course, on YouTube and also on iTunes, and there's like a podcast errors feed, so you can pretty much get it from every applications, podcast applications. Do you have something to add before the end?
No, I say that if you want to be a web developer, find what part of web development you're passionate about and what you enjoy, and just go for it and have fun with it.
Yeah, absolutely. Totally agree. So where they can find you online, and where is your amazing YouTube channel going? Next videos?
Yeah, I'm sure you'll have a link in the description.
Yes.
I've got a couple different playlists I'm working on. One is pretty good for people that are fairly new to CSS on animating objects on the web. You can find me on Twitter at Chris J. Perko. You can find me online at chrisperko.net, and on YouTube.
Awesome. Fantastic. And as usual, like if you're watching or listening to this podcast, you know who I am, you know where you can find me. So whatever, I'm not gonna tell you. But yeah, it's like I haven't published a new tutorial in the past week because I'm recoding and refactoring Sequeler. Hopefully this week I should be able to publish 2 or 3 new tutorials plus this interview. It's gonna be like pretty interesting. And of course, if you have questions and if you have doubts, if you want us to talk more about these topics, just leave a comment below, send us an email. You can find us whatever online. It's gonna be super easy. And until the next episode, as usual, happy coding, right?
Happy coding.
Yeah.